everyone, I'm Allie Buckman with the Potomac Bead Company, and I'm going to show you how to make the Wonderland bracelet today. The Wonderland bracelet got its name because it reminds me a little bit of the Cheshire Cat and the different directions that he has that conversation with Alice about the different paths to go down. This uses the new Kheops beads, which is an awesome new Czech glass bead. It's a triangle shape with 2 holes, and the holes are running through the bottom of one triangle and then through the sides basically of the other one. So it gives this nice effect of the arrows pointing towards one another. Another great Czech product that's used in it is SuperDuo. So I have SuperDuos here. We're also going to be using some 11Os, some O beads, some faceted 3 or 4 millimeter, that's your choice, and I'm using Czech glass, and then also a 6 millimeter Czech glass bead. So we've got a lot of beads here on the start of it. This bracelet was actually designed by Anna from our fulfillment department in our Chambersburg location. So when you get lots of packages from us, it's usually either signed by myself or by Anna. She's too nervous to do a video, even though she does awesome designs. So definitely give her a comment and a little prop down at the bottom here to let her know that she should start doing videos and start sharing more of her awesome designs with you guys. So I'm going to be working with this and going off of her design and just kind of doing an opposite color tone. Where she did the green here, I'm going to be doing the pink with the white-red luster. So that's my Kheops color, is the white-red luster. And when you're looking at it, they're running down the center of the bracelet. On the sides here are an O bead. So the O beads sit right on the side and just give a little pop of another color. I'm going to pop mine out even more by using one that is more off-toned, whereas she used one that is more of the same color. So color-wise for my O bead, I am using the Jet Lila Vega Luster. It's a deep, deep plum purple. For my SuperDuo bead, I'm using the Black Diamond, which is a nice gray, smoky, quartzish color. So those are my 3 main beads that you'll see. Color-wise for my seed bead, my 11O, you could do this with 1 color or 2 colors. I'm going to use this 11O bead here in the galvanized apricot color. So that galvanized apricot color is going to pop out nicely with those. I have a light Colorado or a light topaz AB in my 3 millimeter beads. And then I'm using a matte zinc color Czech glass 6 millimeter bead, and that's going to be used on the sides here. On the sides of hers, Anna also used an 8O seed bead, which was a really pretty addition. I'm going to kind of dress it up a little bit, use my O bead again rather than an 8O seed bead. I'm going to follow through with my O bead here on the side and just pick up another 11O. So I'll show you a little variance as we work with it. I'm going to close it off with a cup button just like she did here, and we are going to be working with 2 needles. So you're going to need 2 size 10 needles. I have a thread burner handy in case I need to burn my thread or to actually take it off my roll. I'm using 0.006 wildfire beading thread. And I also am working on a bead mat. Needle size, again, size 10, fits nicely with that 0.006. I'm using a green color because it kind of is an off-tone. White you would see a lot through some of the different beads. Black's going to be too dark, so I've chosen to use that green color. For the Kheops, we're going to be using about 22 of our Kheops. This bracelet here has 20 on it. It's pretty small. We even put a little extender chain on it. Anna has a very petite wrist, so she made it to fit her, but then also made it a little bit bigger so that way other people could wear it as well, like myself. And when we're working on it too, I'll show you how to make 1 loop, but we'll also go over that double clasp. So you're going to use about 22 Kheops when you are working with them. O bead wise, you're going to use the double that amount, plus we're going to be putting it on the sides of our zinc beads, so I'm going to use a little bit more. You'll have plenty, if you get a tube of each, you have plenty beads to work with, and even 1 strand of your zinc beads will also work as well. So we're basically going with 1s with the quantity. So to get started, I've actually made little piles of all of my beads. And the only bead that I didn't cut apart yet was my zinc 6O, that nice matte finish. I have my cup button to start off with, and I have about 5 feet of beading thread with a needle on either end of my beading thread. when I'm working with this, I'm going to be working with these 2 needles. I'm going to put my cup button on first. I'm going to put the cup button here at the bottom and then run my seed beads up. We're going to be doing the center, basically what you see there right along the center, and then coming back and adding the sides to it. So to start, it's going to be a very simple pattern. We're going to start out with 3 of our galvanized beads right on our needle, and then we're going to take the needles side by side. I'm going to go through the underside of my white shimmer cup button. I wear a lot of pearls, so this just adds that kind of pearl look to the end. Coming out of it then, I'm going to add 3 11-0 seed beads on either side of my needle. So I'm going to add 3 on the right, and I'm adding 3 on my left-hand side. Once I have those, I'm going to drop them down next to my cup button, and then I'm going to get ready to put on my triangles. So the Kheops here, when you're looking at them, they have basically 2 different ways that the holes are going through. One side of the triangle is going to have 2 holes, and I'm going to show you that there. So my triangle, you can see my needles going through. There's one side where it's going to be, I call it the end or the back. That's going to have the 2 holes. And then the top is where the points are going to come out right at the top. So I'm going and I'm putting on the back of the triangle first with my needles going through towards the point. I'm going to let that Kheop drop down next to my cup button. So it adds just a nice little end there. When I'm coming out of the Kheop beads, what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate my needles, and I'm going to be doing basically a right angle weave, but I'm doing it with 2 needles, so that way it's a little bit easier for beginners. If you do know right angle weave, you can easily do this with 1 needle as well. Onto my threaded needle, I'm going to put one of my O beads. I'm going to put an 11-0, a SuperDuo bead, an 11-0, and an O bead. I'm going to just let that drop down a little bit and stick my needle in my bead mat. Pick up my next one, same thing. O bead, 11-0, SuperDuo, 11-0, O bead. Next, what I'm going to do is add my next Kheop. The next Kheop that I'm adding is going to face the opposite direction. So this time when I put my needles in, I'm going to point them through so that way the point is pointing down and the end is pointing towards the back side. So it's pointing away. So you're going to be doing opposite. I'm going to pull nice and tightly, and that's going to pop out those SuperDuos to the side and keep those triangles to the middle. It's going to be that same pattern the whole length here of my bracelet. So again, I'm going to go about 22 Kheops, doing that same thing. And in between those, I'm going to put 1 3mm faceted round on either needle. Then I'm going to get ready to add my next Kheop. This Kheop again is going to go through the back, so you just kind of have to turn them a little bit to see which way is which. I'm going to go up through the back and then coming out the top. So the triangle is pointing towards the long side of the thread, just like that. Again, separating the needles, on goes a O bead, an 11-0, a SuperDuo, an 11-0, oops, and then an O bead. The Kheop beads are really fun to play with. They're a very thoughtful bead, meaning that when you're working with them and you're coming up with a design at the very beginning, it's kind of a little tricky to keep in mind which way the holes are going to be going and which direction they're going to be facing. So it's a little bit challenging. It's fun to play around with. This next one here is going to point down. So that way we're getting that directional look from this Wonderland bracelet. I pull that down and let that drop down. And then that Kheop points towards the last one. I'm going to continue putting on those 22 Kheops in that same exact pattern. Next, go on the 2 3mm faceted round beads, and then the Kheop going through the back side first, putting on my SuperDuos and my ode beads on the side, and then switching the Kheops so that way I'm going through the point side first. So again, we're just going to continue the same design for 22 Kheops. So it's going to be 11 patterns of that design. So I've gotten to the end of adding all of my Kheop beads. When you are doing the 22 or the 11 groups, it's going to get you about a 7.5 almost bracelet. If you do have a smaller wrist and want to do the 11 groups, what you can do just to make it a little bit bigger than the 6.5 inch is just add some 4mm or some of those 3mm faceted rounds, that Czech faceted rounds at the end. That'll lengthen it just a little bit if one length is too long or one length is too short for you. So you can know that ahead of time. You can always also just kind of go back and add a little bit here to the end. So that's up to you. What we're going to do now is actually create our loop for our end. I'm going to take one of the needles, doesn't matter right or left, and I'm just going to kind of poke it into my bead mat or push it aside. So I took that left hand needle, pushed it aside, and what I'm going to be doing is picking up my right hand needle here, and I'm going to be adding a bunch of seed beads onto my right hand needle. Seed bead wise, I'm going to add about 28 seed beads. So you're just going to add a bunch of beads on here. I actually might do 26, make it a little bit tighter since I'm going to be doing the peyote stitch. I'll show you how to do that. And this is the amount of beads that are perfect for the cut button that's on the other end, are between 26 and 28 beads. When you are using a different style clasp, you may need to make a V out of your beads in order to put your clasp on. In that case, put a bead on, 2 beads on your left needle, 2 beads on your right needle, and then go into your clasp. Or you can use a wire protector if you prefer to do that and put that on the clasp. So I have my beads on, and I have a few too many here, so I'm going to take some off. And what I'm going to do then is continuing to hold that same side of my needle. I'm going to take my thread and needle, come down that Kheop there on the other side, and just let my thread and needle hang out in there. The needle then that I was not using on the other side, I'm going to take up through all of those beads going in the opposite direction. We're going to go up the bracelet and then come back as well. So I'm going in here, creating that doubled thread effect for my clasp. I'm also then going to go down the Kheop on the other side, so that way my needles are coming out in the interior of that Kheop, one towards the left of the point and one towards the right of the point. And that's going to have my loop then for my cut button to fit inside. So now what I'm going to do is actually add some of the seed beads. So we're not yet adding our exterior bead. That's going to get added at the very end. What we're going to be doing now is, if you see that little triangular effect here, that little marquee shape effect, we're going to be adding 3 seed beads and picking up the outer hole of our SuperDuo, 3 more, and going back through the Kheop and the 3mm. So my needle's coming out here at the bottom towards my O bead. I'm going to go through the O bead and come out it. So every time you go through the Kheop, you're going to come out the O bead. I'm then going to pick up 3 of my seed beads here. And this is all going to be with my right needle, and then I'll flip over and do the exact same thing on the left-hand side. I'm going to go through the top hole of the SuperDuo, add 3 more beads. So through my O and my Kheop, go through my check glass, my next Kheop, and come out my O bead. If it'll let me do that all at once, that's great. Sometimes you might need to do that in pieces. You're going to give a little pull. Again, 3 beads go on. Go through the empty hole of that SuperDuo at the top. 3 more beads go on. And I'm going to go through the O bead, through the hole of the Kheop, through the check glass, the Kheop, and the next O bead. It doesn't want to let me do it this time, so I'm going to come out next to that Kheop and then come out the O bead. So I've done a couple here on my right hand side. I'm going to flip over and I'm going to pick up the needle on the other side, flip it to the right, and do some on that side as well. Again, going through the O bead, picking up 3 of my 11 O beads, hitting that top hole of the SuperDuo. 3 more beads go on, down through the O bead, the Kheop, the check glass, the Kheop, and then through the O bead as well. Give a nice little tight pull. This will tighten up the project just a tiny bit and create a little bit shorter kind of version going on here. So it's going to pull it just a tiny little bit. And then when we add the zinc beads in, it's going to flatten it back out a little bit. So there go my 3. I'm going to add 3 more. So down through that O bead, down through the Kheop, through the check glass. It doesn't want to let me on this one as I'm adding. So you're just going to let your needle kind of come out wherever you want and then go back into it and back out that O bead. The Kheop hole is kind of on that directional angle, so sometimes it's hard to push through more than just the Kheop at one time. And I'm going to continue down, going the whole way, adding those 3 beads and catching that second hole of my SuperDuo bead. So I've gotten down to the end here, adding those 3 beads, picking up that second hole of the SuperDuo. And you can see I'm coming out the end of my very last Kheop that is closest to my cup button. I'm going to use this opportunity to reinforce my cup button since that's the other side of my closure, and that's going to get a lot of yanking. I'm going to take my needle and thread right after that Kheop, and honestly I would have gone through the Kheop and right through the beads. I just pulled it out so that you could see where I was, and I'm going to go through those beads, up through the cup button, up through the beads as well that are on the top of the cup button, just decorating it, down through the cup button on the other side, and the whole way down that line of 3 beads. When I'm on the other side here, I'm going to flip over and do the same thing. So there'll be 3 threads basically going through that cup button and through all those beads. Then I'm going to take it down the other side here and right down, so I'm coming out my Kheop. I'm going to go actually through the Kheop, and we'll go back and do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to go through the Kheop. I'm going to go through my O bead right there on the end. I'm also going to go through my last 3 beads there. Go through my SuperDuo. And I'm going to go through the first bead on the other side of the SuperDuo. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, down the Kheop. Move that needle out of the way. So I'm going to go down the Kheop, down through there. Oh, I can get out there. Down through the O bead. Again, through those 3 beads. Through the SuperDuo. And through the first bead and come out. So I'm going to be coming out there between that first and second of my beads that are on the side there of my SuperDuo. Once I'm out there, this is the time when I'm getting ready to add my 6mm beads. If you want it to be really shiny and really bright, you can use 6mm faceted round check glass or crystals. You could use bicones. That's kind of up to you what you want to use. Here on the example, again, Anna used the 8mm beads. I'm going to use 2 O beads in place of 1 8mm. So I have my 2 O beads on. Then I'm going to put on one of my rounds, 2 O beads, and then I'm going to sew through the SuperDuo that's closest to my round duo, or I'm sorry, my seed bead that's closest to my SuperDuo, and then through the seed bead on the other side. Give a nice little pull. Again, 2 O beads, 1 round, 2 O's, through the next bead, SuperDuo, bead. I try to do those all at once. Again, sometimes it doesn't want to let me do that. That's fine. The other thing that you could do design-wise, if you wanted to peek a little bit brighter here out on the side, and I might actually even try this on the other side, see which one I like best. Size-wise, it's going to be the same to do an O bead, an 11, a round, an 11, an O. I actually might like this look. And I'm going to go through, same thing. So you can see you can change up the pattern. It's really just the shape that you're going for, or the length, I should say. That's just going to give it a little bit of a different look. I do like that hint of gold there on the outside, so you can see I'm changing up my ideas even as I do the video. And I'm going to do that same thing. So I'll take these out and redo that on the side. So it's going to be an O bead, an 11O, my round, 11, oops, and then an O bead, down through the 11 closest to the SuperDuo, and then the 11 on the other side. So you're always catching that rotation of 3 there and then popping out and coming down the side. I'm going to continue doing this the whole way down the right side, and then I'm going to do it the whole way down the left side as well. So I've gotten pretty much to the end here, adding in all of those zinc beads on the outside. I'm glad I made this switch. I like that hint of gold there on the outside with that apricot color. And I'm just going to basically do the same thing that we did on the other side. So I put on my beads. I'm going through that 3, or that last bead there right next to the SuperDuo. I'm going through the SuperDuo and the 11O. When I come out the other side, I'm going to go through the 11s and also through the round duo and up through the Kheops. I'm also going through the first of my 11O beads, and I'm just going to hang out there because I'm going to do that peyote stitch. On the other side, I'm getting ready to do the same thing. I've added my beads. I'm going to go through my 11, my SuperDuo, and then my 3 11s here on the other side. Up through my SuperDuo, or up through my O bead, and I'm just going to hang out right there with that needle. Back to the one that's here on the right hand side. I'm going to pour out a couple more of my 11O beads, and I'm going to do my peyote stitch. So peyote stitch wise, you're going to put on a bead, skip one of the beads below, and go through the next one in line. So I'm through bead number 1. I'm going to skip bead 2, and I'm going to go through bead 3. Oops, if it'll let me. I'm going to push that off to the side there and make it work. So I add a bead, go through bead 3. Next I'm going to add a bead, skip 4, go through 5. So I'm always going to go through the odd number of beads. Add a bead, skip 6, go through 7, and so on. I'm going to do this the whole way around my loop. That's really going to decorate that loop and give that peyote style look to the loop. It's also really reinforcing the loop. We already have two pieces of thread, excuse me, going through, but this is just going to give a little bit more. I'm going the whole way around then and the whole way through those opposite beads. Once I get the whole way around, basically all I'm going to do is tie off my thread. It's a nice simple ending. Whenever you have two needles, it's really easy to end your projects, and it's also really easy to start your projects. Most of the time I'm using two needles, it's because I'm coming up and back my project. I'm doing mirrored images on right and left, but it allows me to put my clasp on first and to make my loop and reinforce, all without really having to tie on any thread or tie knots. So a two needle project, even if it looks a little bit more intense, if you're a new beader, two needles can be a little intimidating. It often makes it easier for you because you don't have to add that clasp at the very end. You're already in process. And once you're done, you just have your bracelet completed. Sometimes I'll even look at one needle projects, especially for things like bead and wine nights in our store locations and things that we like to get through in one night. We make sure that everybody's done in that hour and a half. And I'll actually take a one needle project and make it into a two needle project. So if you are teaching a friend how to do anything, or you're just getting started, a lot of these two needle projects are great to have. So I'm getting ready to be almost done now. I have one more bead to add. Once I'm done adding that bead, I'm going to go through the last 11L. I'm going to go through my Kheop, and I'm going to come out right on the end of my Kheop bead. And I have my peyote loop done here. All I'm going to do then is remove my needles from my project, take those two ends, and knot. You can pick up your SuperDuo glue if you want, do a little dab of glue. I'm switching hands as I'm doing my knots. What that's doing is that's creating a square knot. Do that about 3 or 4 times. Give nice tight pulls. And then you can take your burner or your scissors, burn through the ends of the thread, ball them down. You can push them together so they fuse together great. And there you have it. You're done with your Wonderland bracelet. So it's a really easy, very pretty bracelet design that Anna, who again is head of our fulfillment, has created. And hopefully you guys like it as much as I did. She had it on, and she often takes home some of our new beads. We get to play. That's one of the props of having all the beads, is we get to play with all of the beads. I fell in love with the design, asked her if I could do it on a video, and tried to talk her into doing a video, but she didn't have that. So I did it for you guys and really had fun playing with those Kheops beads. Again, it's a thoughtful bead. You get to play around with the way that the different holes work and the different direction that the arrows can point. And also got to play around with a lot of other great projects as we were making this awesome little Kheops Wonderland bracelet. If you get a chance to, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. Then we'll give you regular updates on the different products that we have, the classes coming up that we have in our stores, as well as great project ideas like this and others. You can also visit us online at potomacbeads.com. Check out our locations page, come to one of our stores, meet our helpful staff, and we'd be happy to help you with your different projects, gathering materials, and so forth. You can also hit the show more right underneath the video, and I'll list what products are used in the video with links to them as well, so you can purchase them online if you can't get to one of our locations. Thanks a lot for watching, and as always, happy beading and have fun designing and making and playing with these new Kheops beads.